Hello, and welcome back. Today, we will walk through how to update the Schedule B section of the Lab Safety Plan. Start by navigating to the Lab Safety Plan web application. You can access the application from the EHS homepage under EHS Applications and Compliance Portal, Laboratory Safety Plan. You will need your UNC Onion credentials to log into the portal. After you select the PI for whom you are entering information and continue, you will come to the main menu. In this tutorial, we will continue to update the plan we started in Part 1. If you want to learn how to edit an existing plan or the Schedule A section of the Lab Safety Plan, go back and watch Part 1. Now we will find our plan under Plans and Process and click Update to begin. We already updated the Room Use section in Part 1, so we will click Save and Continue to continue to the Schedule Selection screen. You will now see the Schedule Selection screen. You can see from the green check mark that we have already completed the Schedule A form. It is time to complete the Schedule B Hazardous Chemicals and Equipment form. Next, we will need to answer the following questions about hazardous chemicals and equipment in our lab. For this example, all the answers will be yes. Every lab is required to maintain an updated chemical inventory. We will go into further detail about how to update the chemical inventory in a different training video. Now we will discuss the Lab Safety Rules and Procedures page. This portion of the Schedule B is where you will explain detailed procedures of how your lab will handle chemicals. Per OSHA requirements, you must address the use of toxic and carcinogenic chemicals, materials or procedures to be restricted to lab hoods, and areas where eating and drinking are permitted or forbidden. When entering information into this field, consider what engineering controls, such as a chemical fume hood or snorkel, will be utilized. What will your administrative controls be, such as designation of work areas, entry restrictions, or time slots when lab work is allowed? What minimum PPE will be worn while working with chemicals? In the previous video, we uploaded an SOP for formaldehyde, a carcinogenic chemical. Let's add some more information to the lab safety plan about formaldehyde. When finished with this section, click Continue. Next is the Chemical Waste Disposal section. This portion of the Schedule B is where you will provide information about waste generation, amount of waste, type of waste, and how your lab will segregate chemically incompatible waste. Note, you will need to label all waste containers in your lab as unwanted materials, and waste cannot be held for more than 12 months past the accumulation start date. We have a brief training video on waste labeling you can watch for more information, and further guidance in Chapter 12 of the Lab Safety Manual. For chemical waste streams that are generated, I will provide a brief description of what each option means. Non-halogenated solvents are organic compounds that do not have a halogen attached to them. Halogens are a group in the periodic table of elements that include fluorine, chlorine, bromine, or iodine. Examples of non-halogenated solvents include methanol, acetone, ethanol, hexane, toluene, and xylenes. Halogenated solvents are those that do contain halogens. Examples of halogenated solvents include chloroform, bromoform, and dichloromethane. Acid waste is any organic or inorganic compound with a pH of less than 7. Base waste is any chemical compound with a pH greater than 7. Bases are also referred to as alkalis or caustic materials. Heavy metals contain elements like arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead, selenium, mercury, or silver, which can cause adverse health effects and damage to the environment. Mixtures may have an acid, base, or heavy metal mixed with a non-halogenated or halogenated solvent. Other waste is waste that does not fit any of the previously discussed waste categories. Please explain the type of waste in the text box. Once finished with this section, click Continue. Next, we will discuss how to input information about the essential use of mercury. The UNC campus has had a mercury-free policy in place since 2010. If you indicated that your lab uses mercury-containing equipment, please consider the definition of essential use, which is the circumstance where no acceptable alternative for the current use can be located, or where it is found that implementation of an alternative would create a significant long-term financial hardship to the department or research project. If this definition does not apply to your mercury equipment, please consult EHS on proper disposal. If the definition of essential use does apply to your equipment, proceed to the following steps. First, select the room within the lab space in which the mercury item is utilized. Specify the type of equipment, such as a thermometer, mercury bubbler, or other mercury-containing item. Describe the location of the mercury item, such as in a designated cabinet, drawer, or chemical fume hood. Specify approximately how much mercury is contained in the mercury item. And lastly, specify your use of the mercury item, such as performing high heat reactions. Once the information is complete, you will need to click the Add New Mercury Use Form button. If there are multiple mercury-containing items, repeat the previous steps. When you're finished with this step, press the Continue button. Now we'll discuss how to inventory controlled substances utilized in your lab's research. Controlled substances are any drugs or chemical substances whose possession and use are regulated under the United States Controlled Substances Act or the North Carolina Controlled Substances Act. Only registered personnel with the appropriate state and federal licenses can keep controlled substances. To add a controlled substance to your inventory, simply select the substance from the drop-down list under the appropriate schedule and click the button that says Add New Schedule, etc. Repeat this step for each controlled substance in your inventory. You can refer to Chapter 9 of the Lab Safety Manual for more information on controlled substances. We will now proceed to the machinery use section. Some laboratories may use large equipment, hand tools, or power tools. These should be specified on the lab safety plan as part of your overall hazard assessment. You can scroll through the alphabetical list or press Ctrl F on your keyboard to search for equipment. For example, a vacuum pump. You will then need to list the machinery specifications, such as a model number, the room location, and main highlights of the standard operating procedure. You can use the EHS machine safeguarding requirements and general training on machine safeguarding as resources to help you input information. Now we'll discuss the Hazardous Chemicals Emergency Procedure section. This is where you will explain any lab-specific emergency procedures in addition to the procedures listed in Chapter 1 of the Lab Safety Manual. For example, what chemicals in your lab should be placed in a flammable cabinet to prevent a fire emergency? Does your lab have a designated location for a chemical spill kit? Are there particularly hazardous substances in your lab that have special spill procedures or that emergency responders should be aware of? Is there a route, lab members should take to evacuate the building. Do you have an emergency meeting point? Discuss any of these or more in the text box and click Continue when finished. Now we'll look at personal protective equipment, or PPE. You'll need to examine all current and potential operations performed in your lab and check the box next to each hazard present in the workspace. Once selections are made, click Continue. Now you will determine if your lab requires more than the minimum required PPE. In the boxes, you can specify chemicals or procedures for which additional work practices or protections are required. For example, you may have a particularly hazardous material that requires a designated area, or a procedure that requires the use of a face shield. You can input information about additional PPE requirements, specific chemicals, storage locations, designated work area locations, or more. Once this information is added, you will need to attest that lab personnel have received PPE training and that no additional PPE is required for the lab by checking the boxes. We have finished editing the Schedule B portion of our lab safety plan. In the next training video, we will explore how to update and submit your chemical inventory. Thanks for watching.